he basically said, "What are you, chicken? Get on a bull, ride a bull." And I'll tell you what, talk about elation. Elation is getting off a 3,000-pound raging bull that wants to kill you and not getting hurt. Wow. That's elation. I used to ride a bull, and from the moment they opened the chute, I'm thinking, how am I going to get off? I'm not worried about staying on, but getting off is a real problem, because if the bull is moving left, you surely don't want to go off on the right side because you're going to meet his hind legs. So there's really, talk about elation. That's pretty elation. And the only reason I tell you that is because to put it into perspective with a jockey. Imagine a 100-pound jockey on a 1,200-pound horse in full flight, gliding over the racetrack. I got to believe that is a phenomenal thing, because when I ride horses, every so often when we let them go and we let them run down the straightaway, just a riding horse, we're in a Western saddle and everything else, but when you let them go, that feeling of the wind blowing through your hair and that horse in full flight is a really good feeling.
And going up onto the gallops and waiting for the horses to come through the mist, and you could hear the hooves pounding in the distance.
And then suddenly they break out.
I mean, and that's just a training run. As you know yourself, the euphoria of watching horses come steaming through.
It's amazing how everybody does it a little differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I go to Deauville, and I go there for the sales. You got those little tiny streets, and everybody's driving cars all over the place. And there's horses walking down the streets because there's yards in Deauville. And then they're out on the beach in the morning training horses on the beach. And in the afternoon, it's all people. It's just so amazing to watch. I so loved watching the horses train in France. It was just amazing.
The relationship that you have with the horses is very much like a rock star has with his audience.
Yes.
Because you have said that you are a frustrated musician.
I am. David was a rock star that wanted to be a horse trainer, and I'm a horse trainer that always wanted to be a rock star. And I did have, I play guitar, and I played with David many, many times. I played with his band. I had the opportunity to play with Herman's Hermits, Peter Noon. I love playing with them. I played with Yvonne Elliman, Gloria Gaynor. I played with some greats, but my heart was in horse racing. So when David and I met, it was like a match made in heaven. David approached me. I had bought a horse at the Saratoga sale one year, and David came up to me and said, that was my horse. And I'm like, oh, cool. And I knew it was David Cassidy, but one thing I learned early on, people appreciate you more if you don't do the starstruck thing with them. If you just talk to them like they're a normal person. I think he really loved that aspect of me. I treated him just like he was like my good friend, and we hung out together, and always talked horses. Always. He never wanted ever to talk music. Yeah. We talked horses. We only talked music if something sparked it. Like, a horse that was bred by Davy Jones won a race. We'd talk a little bit about Davy Jones, from the Monkees, or we would occasionally talk, but David wanted to talk horses all the time. We never talked music. He surrounded himself with the horses.
You mentioned that you bought a horse and he said, that was mine. Can you tell us what happened after that and how your friendship evolved?
Well, I was one of the leading trainers in New York. So David knew who I was, and I knew who David was. But again, he was at the sale in Saratoga, and David walks through a crowd in Saratoga, and it's everybody's oohing and ahhing, right? But I don't do that. I would want him to have his own life. I want people, I talk to Joe Pesci and, all kinds of people that have horses in this business. At the time I was training for Sam Shepard, the playwright.
Yeah.
And he was with, what was her name? one of the great actresses of all time. He was his wife, and it'll come to me. But again, I just try to, I don't get starstruck, you know, and it's been something that really works for me. So David is at the sale. I bought a horse that David bred. I have no idea that David bred the horse, because I have a catalog and I have a visual of that horse, and that's what I'm buying him off of, not who bred it. That doesn't mean anything to me. We don't go that deep. So David comes up to me, he goes, "Hey, Gary, that was my horse you bought." And I'm like, "Oh, great." He goes, "Man, you're going to love this horse." And David proceeds, and this is what David was amazing at. David was like an encyclopedia of horse racing and horse breeding. He knew everything. He tells me, okay, her first dam won 16 races on the grass and only 2 races on the dirt. But the grandfather of the first dam was a dirt horse only. And none of them ever liked the dirt, like the mud. And, the fillies ran better than the colts and blah, 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 blah. And he was a walking encyclopedia. So I'm taking this all in, and my wife is sitting next to me, and she's like poking me, and she's like, "Is that David Cassidy?" "Yeah, it's David Cassidy." So we're talking for an hour and a half. We're having a few drinks. It's just getting better and better. And man, we hit it off, and we never talked music, and I never said anything to him but horses. And the next day at Saratoga, he shows up at my barn. And I have in front of my barn, I have a beautiful table and chairs for the owners when they come, and we put the racing form out there. And David sits down, and it's 7:00 in the morning, and he's smoking a cigar that's as big as he is, and he's reading my racing form, and he's like, "Hey, Gary, what about this horse? And what do you think about this horse? And you see this horse that's running in the 3rd race today? I owned his mother, blah, blah, blah," and going on and on and on. And we're talking horses, and we're talking this, and we're talking that. And our friendship just blossomed at that moment. And David would come to my barn. He lived in Saratoga, a stone's throw from the track. You could see the track from his house. He would come over to my barn every single day. And he would sit at that table in front of my barn while I trained horses. And he'd walk out to the track with me sometimes, and we'd walk back together, and he'd read the racing form, and he would talk about horses. He'd talk about breeding. He'd talk about this. He'd talk about that. We just became inseparable friends. And he would hang out at my barn all morning, and I would run horses every day. I had a huge stable at the time. And we would go, he had a box. He had a box right behind the governor's box at Saratoga, right at the finish line. And he'd go, "Come to my box today. We'll hang out." I'd go to his box, and, that area was kind of like a celebrity area. Joe Pesci had a box. The guy who plays House, he's an Englishman. He had a box there. And anyway, so but we never talked music. Now, young girls would come by, "Oh, David, can I have your autograph?" For this, that, the other. But David didn't even want to be bothered. He wanted to talk horses. And he'd come to the winner's circle with me, and he'd come down to the paddock with me, and we'd hang out all day at the races. And then slowly but surely, David and I started we started doing friend stuff. We'd go riding together, horse riding together. We'd attend sales together. Then David had some partners in the horse business. We would buy horses together. David and I went to a horse sale one day. And David said, "I got a couple $100,000 we're going to spend on a horse. Let's get a good one." Well, we're watching, you sit there for 3 or 4 days straight, and you watch every horse run past you. You get to see him once. And you watch the horse's action, you watch his facial expressions, and you create a short list of horses. Well, every racetrack has an alarm that rings when a horse gets loose. So all of a sudden, David and I are sitting in the grandstand, and the alarm goes off. So immediately everybody looks up because you want to see what's going on when the horse gets loose. Well, a horse had gotten loose on the far side, about a half a mile away from us, on the back side of the racetrack, and he's running the wrong way. He's running clockwise. as opposed to counterclockwise. And he is under a full head of steam. He dumped the rider. He's got no rider on his back. The reins are flapping. The saddle's flapping. He runs past us. We're in the grandstand. He runs past us the wrong way. And I'm not kidding. You could feel like a jet just went by. You could feel the vacuum from the speed that horse had going the wrong way. And he runs all the way down the track and jumps over the fence and disappears. And David turns to me, and I turn to David, and he says, "We're buying that horse. If he didn't kill himself, we're buying that horse." I said, "You're damn straight we're buying that horse, David." And it turned out to be a horse named Mayan King, who we almost got to the Kentucky Derby that year. He was that good. We won stake races. Bob Baffert offered us $7 million to buy him from us. David wouldn't sell him. And he was, and the funny thing is, I'm like, Mayan King. Why did he name that horse Mayan King? Well, one day I go to Fort Lauderdale, and David says, "Oh, come stay at my house." He goes, "You turn right on Mayan King Drive." He lived on Mayan King Drive. And I'm like, okay. So that's where that came from. And he lived right on the canal. I used to stay at David's house all the time. And sure enough, Mayan King turned out to be a good one. And together, so David and I started breeding mares together and selling the offspring. And David had an uncanny ability of knowing horse pedigrees. And he would know, I know racehorses. David knows pedigrees. Now, I know because of my life of being a horse trainer, I know enough to do really, really well on the breeding side of horses. But I don't know anything compared to David Cassidy. David knew everything about horse breeding. We would see a mare. He said, "Gary, I want you to come see this mare." We'd go to a broodmare sale, and I would see. My job was to pass that broodmare on conformation and the way her muscles tie into her shoulders and the way her hip muscles. I need the individual. David would say, "Gary, this mare, the mother, the grandmother, the grandfather, the great-grandfather, the mom," he would go on for 20 minutes. "We got to buy her." Well, she passed my inspection. She passed David's pedigree analysis, and we'd buy her. And we'd put her in foal, and we'd sell the offspring. And it was a very lucrative business for the two of us.
Why did he have such an affinity with horses, the same way that you did when you were growing up?
The funny thing is he was always pretty much David Cassidy. But I saw pictures of him at Santa Anita Park with his father, Jack Cassidy, when he was like 10 years old, 11 years old. I think Jack was now we didn't talk about Jack because Jack had a very untimely death. And, David didn't talk about Jack a lot, but I know how much he loved his father. And I think Jack Cassidy had that same love of horses, and he passed that down to David because they owned horses. His family, Jack and his brothers and whatnot, owned horses at Santa Anita when David was very, very young. And David loved it. He loved it. He was with a trainer named Bobby Frankel before Bobby Frankel was the greatest trainer that ever lived. And that's arguable, but I mean, in the United States, you say, name the top 3 trainers to anybody that ever lived, Bobby Frankel's got to be one of them. I mean, the guy won everything. So David was with him, and David always had this affinity for horses. Just amazing. I mean, he was a walking encyclopedia the day we met, and we met 25, 30 years ago. We were friendly that long. We were together that long since I'm going to say the late 80s, early 90s. David and I hooked up, and we were almost inseparable. And then we did a lot of cool things too. Like we'd be walking through the grandstand at Saratoga, and they have all kinds of shows going on. They have a band here, a band there, a band there. David and I would go up to the band, and I'd grab a guitar, and David would grab a guitar, and we'd play a song. and people would go crazy for that. You
Wow.
know, David had a, he was great. One time, I used to do the Derby party for one of the big one of the big TV sports centers. Okay,
Okay.
and they had a Derby party every year in Sarasota, Florida, at a yacht club, at the yacht club in Sarasota. And they would have a huge screen TV, and you could bet on the races, and they'd have auctions, and everybody be drinking, and it would be a lot of fun. And we raised money for charity doing that. And then one day, I mentioned to David, and just in passing, what I was doing this week, I'm going to do the Derby party. I think it was for ESPN or whatever. And he said, that's cool. And in the middle of the Derby party, now I'm up on stage talking horses and running this thing. It was a fun event. I loved it. And David comes walking in. The whole place goes ooh and ah. He comes up on stage and he goes, puts his arm around me. He goes, "This is my best friend in the whole world. Nobody knows more about horses than this guy." And we were up there, and we had such a good time at that party. And then he came every year after that. It was great. It was really a lot of fun. He would call me up on stage, and we did, we would do a lot of songs. We'd even do "I Think I Love You." We did all of his songs. I don't remember, you know what? I don't remember doing Gloria, but I
Really?
might have. But I don't remember doing Gloria. He called me up. I was in Westbury Music Fair, and they have a revolving stage, and it was David Cassidy and his band. And he's going around, and he sees me. I'm in like row 6, and he goes, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! Stop the song! Stop the song! My horse trainer's here, and I want him to come up and play a song." And there's like 20,000 people there. I get up and I play a song with him. And what he loved to do was, when I played with him, was go off on a tangent jamming. He would grab a guitar, he would be belting out leads, and we would just play a blues progression, or we would play something, and he would go absolutely nuts. Then he taught me a song that his father, the last album David ever put out, Songs My Father Taught Me,
Mm-hmm.
there was a song on there, and the name, I'm having a senior moment on the name, but he said, "This is my favorite song on the entire album. I want you to learn it." And then every time he called me up, we did that song. Every time. BB King's in Manhattan, the music fair. He would be doing a show, just a random show in Red Bank, New Jersey, at the Count Basie Theater, wherever. If he knew I was there, he called me up, and he made me into a superstar, which I loved, because everybody would say, "His horse trainer, what the hell's going on there?" And I was kind of like, I would dress the part, because I had a funny feeling, just in case he called me up. I didn't want to look like a schlump. So I'd go up there, I'd have cowboy boots on or whatever, and tight jeans, and I'd be playing, guitar, and boy, it was great. And the
Oh,
greatest part was, till the day David passed, women still threw their underwear and their bras at him. I would be ducking bras and underwear. I'm like, "You see that, David?" He's like, that was an amazing thing. David would get done playing. There'd be like 5 thongs, all different size bras and everything, and the girls would be in the front row pulling up their shirts, and I'd be like, "No wonder you're here, David. This is great."
oh,
Love it.
that is the life of a rock musician, you see. You
Yes,
get to
yes.
do
And
that.
I was headed that way. But I wanted to be a horse trainer. And
Mm.
so, who knows? Who knows what would have happened if I wasn't? I would have never met my wife and had all these beautiful kids.
Think of the friendship that you had with David, that just
It's
spanned all
amazing.
those decades. What was his special relationship with horses?
David was all about racing. If I wanted information about something he did, I would have to start that conversation. And I didn't, because I knew he didn't want to talk about it. He wanted to talk about racing. He wanted to handicap horses. He wanted to watch races. He wanted to be in the winner's circle. He wanted to do everything horses. When he came to the barn, though, you could tell the love he had for horses, because he would, if you come to my barn, you got 30 or 40 horses and their heads are sticking out, and we feed them carrots and we pet them. And we have some that you can't pet. We have some that are mean as a junkyard dog, but David knew the kind ones and he knew the mean ones, and David would go right down the line and hug them and kiss them and interact with them. And he loved being around horses. That was his happy place. Being at the barn, being around horses, that was his happy place. Nobody bothered him. The horses didn't ooh and ah over him. He was just another human in the world of horses when he was at the barn, and he loved that so much. And it's funny, 25, 30 years of friendship, and David never once talked about a movie, never once talked about the Partridge Family, never, if something. Now, if I asked him something about something, something or other, hey, if I asked him a question, he would tell me, but he never initiated any talk about anything that he did, ever. He was not full of himself. He wanted to escape that. And as a matter of fact, you could tell by when you were with David would reach a point where he had to get away. And that was my job. Sometimes I just had to keep people away from him. And sometimes he had just had enough, so he would look to me. We would get ready to go into a restaurant. And he'd say, Gary, it's been a really rough day for me today. You gotta keep everybody away from me, and just kind of hold them at bay. Don't be mean to anybody. Yeah, I knew what I needed to do, and I could do it very good. I'm very good at help getting David what he wants. But you can believe it, if she was 5'2", blonde hair, blue eyes, and really cute. Oh, whoa! I'll talk to her for a second. David, one thing about David, he had a good eye. But you know what he told me? And this pertains to you. He told me, my biggest fan base in the entire world is England. He said, I have more fans in England than I have anywhere in the entire world. That's what he said to me. I said, man, he goes, trust me, England, when I go to England, it's nuts. He says, they are nuts for me over there. And I said, interesting. I never went with him to England, so he's probably right.
David Cassidy, rock star.
He was. And you hit the nail on the head. That's why David loved the fan base in England, because he wasn't hearing Keith, Partridge, blah, blah, blah. I would imagine his concerts in the United States were everybody screaming Keith to him. Yeah. Everybody, Partridge Family, Get Up, the shirts, the everything, and that did drive him a little bit batty.
He's still there as that image, which is everything he never really wanted to be.
He didn't want to be. That's a fact. He did not want to be Keith Partridge. He wanted to be Mick Jagger. He wanted to be Paul McCartney. He didn't want to be Keith Partridge. Keith Partridge held him back because everybody was in love with Keith Partridge. He never got the respect he probably deserved and really wanted as a rock and roller because of Keith Partridge. That's a fact.
Was being a horse owner important to him?
Yes. Yes, because it was the business that he loved. Like when David had hit a wall, and that was divorce, financial troubles, Chapter 7, couple of lawsuits. Like it was a culmination of many things that hurt David financially. And you can't be a horse owner. Horses are expensive. I would give David pieces of horses just to keep him involved in the game. I wanted him there. It was very important to him. And David would still have his name on the program next to mine. And he owned a horse, and I wouldn't even charge him. I mean, he was that good a friend to me. Right. And he would just, because he did hit that bad couple years where things just that did not go his way. So, and we all do. We all do. You know, very rarely you're blessed if you don't hit that bad time, you know, in life. You know, it happens.
Yeah.
But it was very important for David to stay in touch with the racetrack, and that was his first love. He never, till the day he passed, he was at the racetrack with me every time I went there. If I would winter half my stable in Florida, and every time I ran a horse at Gulfstream Park, David would be there, and we'd have lunch together, and we'd go to the paddock, and we'd hang out and everything else, because he was right across the river in Fort Lauderdale. We would spend days on end together when I was in Florida.
So with this passion for horse racing, did he ever seriously think about becoming a trainer and making that total commitment?
No, never, because his expertise was not in the day-to-day rigors of being a trainer. Mm-hmm. And while I don't know this for sure, let's face it, David was a rock star, and rock stars don't wake up at 4:30 in the morning and a 12-degree morning and go take care of horses. I'm sorry. No matter how much you love them, you show up when it warms up and you hang out on the table outside the barn and you read the racing form. Okay? I could never see. David's about going to sleep when I'm getting up and going to the track.
I guess from what you're saying, I mean, he led such a public-private life. So while fame can bring you so many privileges and advantages, it can also feel like a prison.
Yes. And David felt that quite often. David felt that. And, you know, so I made sure that his escape was the racetrack. And I made sure that he was going to be able to enjoy his day at the racetrack and not have to be bothered by strangers who wanted this or that. And the word was out in my barn: you do not bother David Cassidy with music stuff. You just leave him be when he comes to the barn. And everybody knew it. And most of my help were, a lot of the help on the racetrack are from other countries, so they really didn't know him. But the young girls who ride the horses and stuff, they were always enamored with David. But the rule was, look, you can talk to David, but you can't swoon over David. This is David's happy place, and we're going to make sure that it remains that way for him. And that's the way it was. And I think that's why he loved me so much, is because he could escape that. And at the races, he could escape also because his box was in a kind of a restricted area, and it was nice. And when David wanted to interact, he got up and he interacted, but he didn't have to be overwhelmed with it, because if you allowed it to be, there would be a line of people wanting his autograph every single day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and talk to me. I want to talk to you. I want this. We made sure this was David's happy place.
And he would spend a lot of time with you and your wife and family.
Oh, yeah. He would come stay at our house. If we had a party, he would come to my house. I had a farm, a beautiful farm upstate New York. And we still live upstate New York. But David would come to our house. He would come to all the parties. He was very, very close to my wife. And, and he would call her out of the blue. And David would call me. David would call me at 3:00 in the morning. And my wife would say, phone's ringing, I'll bet it's David. And sure enough, he would need to talk to somebody. He would, I always answered the phone when it was David. And my door was always open to David. And he would come and go as he pleased. And he could do that. But he was very close to my wife. At times I'd say, hon, you're not too close to David Cassidy. He's David Cassidy. So, no. I'm sure he would like that, but no. It's not happening. David's great. David was the greatest, and he was both of our friends, and as much my wife's friend as mine.
I know how deep your friendship was and how much it meant to him and obviously to you. I mean, that's so evident in everything that you're saying. I wonder if I could just take you back in your relationship with David to 2008, I think it was, when you attended a fundraising gala for the Alcohol and Substance Abuse Prevention Council in Saratoga, which was where David revealed in a speech that he just spent time at the Betty Ford Clinic and was announcing publicly, with his family by his side, that he was an alcoholic. I wondered how much courage you felt it took for him to say that.
He kind of took me off guard.
Okay.
Like, I knew that he was called to be the guest speaker at this function, and I knew that David was an alcoholic. I mean, I knew that. And when I say alcoholic, don't get me wrong. Alcoholics aren't the guys laying in the street, with the bottle or anything like that. Alcoholics are people that need to drink every day. And that doesn't mean you're sloshing drunk. That doesn't mean you're ignorant drunk, anything like that. But it's when you have a problem. That's an alcoholic. And David, I knew he was an alcoholic, and I knew he had gone through rehab. And I was very proud of him, what he had to say to that group. And it took courage, but I think that when somebody like David Cassidy, or somebody that the world admires, alludes to the fact that they're not perfect, it really helps others who are suffering the same affliction. And I think that probably was very, very important to many people that were in that room to hear what he had to say. Hey, it's not just mailmen, it's not just school bus drivers, it's not just your average ordinary Joe, it's David Cassidy too. I also have a problem with alcohol. And so I think it was very meaningful, and it was pretty amazing to hear him say that, because I didn't know what was coming. He just told me, let's go, we'll go into this thing tonight. And my wife and I went, and his wife was there, and Bo. And I had no idea what he was going to talk about. I just thought it was another Saratoga fundraiser, and we were going to bid on auction items and silent auctions and have a few drinks. And then when I realized when we got there, oh, geez, this is alcohol and substance abuse, and David's the guest speaker, I said, this could be interesting for sure.
Yeah.
And it was. He was good. He was powerful that night.
And you must have found that very difficult to watch and to hear.
Well, I lived it with David. I knew David was drinking too much, and I knew David had a problem, and so I was aware of the issue, but I was more proud than anything to hear him talk about it. I was like, man, that takes a lot of courage to get up there and tell the whole world that you have a problem and admit to that problem. It's not an easy thing, and it was amazing, and not far. Fast forward, not far. David actually fell off the wagon again. This is something David struggled with his entire life, but he was never, ever. You never saw David sloppy drunk. You never saw David. He never stumbled. He never did stupid things that, real bad, stupid drunks do. I would guess that the world, I knew David, so I knew those few little subtle things when David had been drinking. But to the world, nobody would assume that. Nobody would assume that from David. David had a very good way of covering it up. He was very good at drinking and doing his day-to-day stuff. So, I was very proud of David that day, and it's a difficult thing. I don't think I could have stood up in front of that group and said what he said. But he was bound and determined, and he wanted everybody to know, hey, I'm not perfect, and I'm just like a lot of people in this room. It was a great speech. One thing about David, he could captivate an audience, whether he was talking or playing the guitar or singing. He could captivate an audience, and he had that audience in the palm of his hand that night.
He obviously wanted to change because he said that night, it's a journey now, every day, 24 hours to stay sober. But he did, as you say, fall back into whatever demons, whatever triggers there were in his life, that it was something he, from the outside, was never able to give up.
And interestingly, we never talked about it. He didn't talk about his struggles with alcohol. He had them. I didn't judge. I didn't drink in front of him if I was with him.
When was the last time that you'd actually seen him?
I saw him about 2 weeks before he passed, and then he went down to Florida, and then, you know, and we just talked a few times during those 2 weeks, and David called me from the hospital, and he said, "Oh man, I'm in the hospital. I took a blood test, and they don't like my liver enzymes, and man, they're putting me through all these tests, and I'm hoping to get out of here this week." And 2 days later, he passed. And I'm like, I can't believe this. Yep. And I was just like, I can't believe this. I can't believe David passed. My wife freaked out. You know, everybody that knew him freaked out, because David went into that hospital just thinking it was, you know, some kind of nonsense. You know, they're just going to put him through some tests. He didn't realize how dire the situation was, and he didn't share it.
Had you seen a decline?
Oh yeah, I did.
But not to the extent that you thought.
No, because there were days when, you know, David was getting older. David was in his 60s. I mean, I saw that kind of decline, you know, and David always had very sore feet, you know, from being on stage and dancing and all the things that he did. So I saw that kind of decline, and I saw the Dr. Phil show, you know, when Dr. Phil had him on, which was awful. And I saw the videotape of the BB King show where he seemed like he was kind of lost, you know, and that was at BB King's in Manhattan. You know, I saw the decline that everybody else saw, but in between he was David. You know, I mean, he wasn't, you know, I know David well enough to know exactly what happened at BB King's, to know exactly what was going on in his life. But who am I to say anything? You know, if he wanted to talk about it, I'd talk about it with him. If he wanted to not talk about it, I'm not gonna talk to him about it.
But you never thought for one moment, I must go and see him.
No, he didn't drop 50 pounds and, you know, lose the color in his skin. And, you know, I mean, he didn't look like he was going to pass. He looked like David Cassidy. He looked the same. He was quite normal when he passed, you know, but I didn't, you know, but I guess, you know, when you have liver problems, it's like it's a very quick, you know, it's bad and it's fast.
How did you hear the news?
A good friend called, Dr. Belinsky, and Dr. Belinsky was as good a friend to David, if not better than me. You know, I mean, Belinsky is a great guy, and he opened his doors to David, and, you know, David did concerts for his horse rescue and his animal rescue and stuff. But I believe David, I believe Dr. Belinsky called me and told me, or I might have just heard it on the radio. I was like, you know, I can't remember how I heard it, but I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned, because you couldn't make me believe it. When I talked to him 2 days before he passed, he didn't talk like he was suffering. Like, he just sounded like he was more aggravated having to be there than anything else.
Obviously, deeply upsetting time for everybody. You must have, though, felt very proud to have been involved with his wish to have his ashes scattered at Saratoga.
Yeah, I was so proud that I didn't even ask if I could do it, because I knew that they would say no. He wanted his ashes scattered on the racetrack. And one thing about New York, it's such BS red tape, everything you want to do. You have to get a permit. You have to get permission. You have to get this. You have to get that. Now, because I'm sure somebody would have said, well, we're not going to let you spread his ashes there. That's not sanitary, or that's not, you know, or or this or that, or this horse's, who knows what New York would have said. But I've seen them say no to many people over the years that passed that wanted their ashes scattered there. So I knew it wasn't going to happen. So I just arranged it. And we had everybody show up. The track closes at 10:30. We had everybody. People flew in from California. We had a group of about 60 people of David's closest friends. So we waited till 10:15, and I didn't tell anyone regarding racing. I didn't tell the NYRA management. I didn't tell the CEO. I didn't ask permission from the racing organization. I didn't say anything to anybody. We had David's ashes in a big plastic bag, and I had one of my horses and my riders cut a hole in the bottom of the plastic bag and galloped the horse around the track with all this dust coming out of the bag. And we did the whole racetrack, and there's this big cloud of smoke, and the horse sees the smoke, and the horse starts freaking out, and the horse is rearing up and carrying on, and we're spreading David's ashes, and all the people are going, and some, at Saratoga, the place is so full of people, people with cameras and everything else, that a lot of people took pictures of it. And sure enough, one of the pictures was published, and I told them what we were doing, and I didn't ask permission, because I don't think we would have ever been granted permission to do that. Somebody would have found fault with it. So I just went ahead and did it. But that's what David wanted. Well, actually, we planted a tree and we put a plaque up right in that area where we started that. And that's sitting there at Saratoga. We have a David Cassidy bench in the Hall of Fame. So we've done our due diligence, that's for sure.
Do you believe in the afterlife?
Do I believe in the afterlife? My wife certainly does, and I hope there's an afterlife. There's a lot of people I'd like to see that are no longer with me. I mean, I grew up in an interesting era. I lost a lot of my high school friends in Vietnam. I've had many animals over the years that I adored that, died, after 10 or 12 years or whatever, dogs and cats. And I would love, I'd love to see my grandmother again. I'd love to think that I could see everybody that meant something to me, but I'm not so sure. I really haven't given it a thought. I want to be cremated also. I want my ashes spread. I don't really care where you spread them, as long as it's someplace outdoors where there's like nature. I love deer. I'm a fanatic for deer and horses. So I just want my ashes spread. And, I'm torn as to whether there's an afterlife and we're going to see all these people that we love so much, or if it just goes black and our spirit goes to another place. I just don't know.
See, after the ashes were spread, you asked David for some help, didn't you? I
did. I talk to David all the time.
Do you?
I talk to him even now. I talk to him all the time. I'm like, David, boy, did I screw this up, man. What do you think? I talk to him all the time. I did ask David for help. I just said, David, I ran in a very big race shortly thereafter. And I said, David, man, I take all the help I can get on this one, because I was 20 or 30 to 1. And it was a $1 million grade 1 race. And I won it. And somebody asked me in a winner's circle, hey, did you talk this over with David Cassidy before? I said, I sure did. And even now, when I did something I shouldn't have done, and it involved my wife. And I said, David, I really screwed up. And David, I have to get out of this mess. I got you out of a few messes in your life. I need you to get me out of this mess. And I got out of it. I did okay. I fared well after that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I talk to David all the time, but he doesn't talk back. But I do talk to him. I do let my thoughts go to him, and I think about him all the time.
Well, if you ask the spirit world for help, they will find a way to help you.
It's amazing. Especially if you give, you receive. And I know that very, very well.
How did his death affect the thoroughbred racing community?
Well, the people that knew David really mourned his death. And the racing community is a strange community. You know, people die that meant so much to racing, and there's like one day of mourning, and then the next day nobody talks about him anymore. I mean, they took the name off of David Cassidy's box like within days of David's passing, and it's like I'm like, this is, it's the racing, the powers that be in racing are not always the greatest people in the world. But I can tell you the people on the backstretch really missed David, the regular people. Those that run racing could care less because they can't make a buck off of David anymore. But the powers that the people on the backside, the lives that David touched on a regular basis, they were beside themselves. Everybody loved David.
Now, you set up in his memory the I Think I Love You Foundation.
I did.
Yeah. Can you tell me what led to you forming this and explain its core values?
There's a lot of David Cassidy fans out there. Most of them are female, okay? And they are borderline fanatics, okay? I don't know what better word for it. They live, eat, breathe, sleep David Cassidy. Still to this day. You go on Facebook, it's all David Cassidy, David Cassidy, David Cassidy. I'm like, don't these people work? It's all about David. So all of his fans, the first thing they did was they wanted to have a tribute concert for David Cassidy, and they wanted me to play with David Cassidy's original band, and they made it happen. We had a show in Saratoga. Place was sold out. We had a beautiful show, and I got to meet all these women that put this show together, and I became friendly with them. It was the first time I'd ever met them. I might have seen them at concerts, but I never met them. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we had a greater interaction. And as much as I would like to take credit for the I Think I Love You Foundation, they reached out to me and they said, Gary, we want to set up a foundation in David's name, and we want you to be president. I said, well, look, I don't have time to be president, but I'll be on the board of directors. I'm happy to do it. And I'm happy to guide the organization and be the face of the organization if you need me to, but let's have one of you guys be president, because it's a lot of work. I'm the president of the Acceler Fund, which is an animal rescue, and that takes up a lot of my time. So they put together the I Think I Love You Foundation, and it's in David's honor. And what we do is we support horses in need. And the most needy horses are horses. Let's face it, in football, plenty of times the athletes have career-ending injuries. Baseball, career-ending injuries. Every sport, there is some of the greatest players, they end up someday having a career-ending injury. And horses have career-ending injuries, yet they continue to cost $500-600 a month to take care of, even though they may never, they're not in pain, but they may never be useful to do anything else again. And yet they gave so much of their life to people when they were racehorses that we raise money to support horses in need that are no longer at the racetrack. And there is a lot of them out there. And as president of the Acceler Fund, our organization supports 153 horses. We have satellite farms all over the United States. And we also set up the equine program at the Tulsa Boys Home for disadvantaged youths, the Wallkill Correctional Facility for prisoners. And so the I Think I Love You Foundation has taken over, has also adopted some racing warriors that have no future, that need constant veterinary care and constant care. And we're raising money to support horses because we know that's what David would want. And I am an advisor. I'm on the board of directors, and that's what we do. And that is what David would want. And we're new, but we are a not-for-profit, and we have tax-exempt status. And all the donations are tax-exempt. We're constantly trying to raise money because we're going to keep continuing to help horses with the money that we raise.
And as you say, that was a cause very close to his heart.
It was, because he loved horses when their career was over. He loved them. He was enamored with them. And, his love fell on brood mares, primarily, but he loved those racing warriors. None of his horses that raced for him went for, disappeared. He took care of them in their retirement as well.
Because he would have loved to have won the Kentucky.
Every horse owner, David wasn't a guy that